Smiles up, and
hi, I'm Scott Kinworthy, and I'm an entrepreneur. Let's see, to tell you a little bit about myself, from the context of being an entrepreneur, I started playing music when I was 15, and full on went into music. Within like 6 months, I had a full-time gig, and that's how I made my money. Then I went into college. I was studying music performance from a percussion angle, was full on a music performance major, and from a symphonic standpoint, although I did a lot of other stuff as well. And somewhere in that journey, I had like a full ride to this college in Florida, and somewhere along the way in that journey, I had started playing drums and percussion at this theater, this regional theater in Florida. And I remember like being in the pit, you know, like watching some of the acting with some of these musicals, and I remember thinking, you know, I don't know much about acting, but I think I could give that a try. I think I'd like to maybe give that a try. Like maybe I'd be okay at it. I don't know. But I didn't really know how to get into it. I just didn't have any idea, so I just, you know, kept going on my music career. And somewhere along the way, in like maybe three and a half years into my schooling at college, I went to this convention called PASIC, Percussive Art Society International Convention. And I was walking past this table, and it was a casting booth kind of at this huge convention for Blue Man Group. It was like literally like I walked in the door and like walked up to that table, and I was like standing there, and I was like watching this video. This had like this TV screen of these like performances they had done on the Tonight Show and the Good Morning America, or I can't remember what, and this person comes out from behind the desk and says, "Hey, how tall are you? You about 6 foot?" And I said, yeah, I am." And go back to like watching this video, you know, and then they said, so what do you weigh? I was a little lighter then. You weigh about like what, 150, 160? And I'm like, yeah, that's exactly why. She's like, "Would you want to audition?" And I'm like, what? To be a drummer? She's like, no, to like be a Blue Man. And I was like, oh, huh, that's sure. So like, you know, they had like this two-sided like sheet. One side was like your music experience. I'm like, oh, like I played with this symphony, I played in this orchestral thing, blah blah blah. Like filled that out. And then I turned it over, and it was like, what's your acting experience? And I was like, none. You know. So I was like, you know what? I don't think this is for me. You know. And I like slid the paper across the table, and I was like, and I left. Apparently, the story goes that like as I walked away, the casting director looked at the other guy she was with in the booth. She's like, "That dude's gonna be a Blue Man." And he was like, "Yeah, whatever." He just walked away. And oddly, I spent like 3 days thinking about it. It was like a 4-day convention, and it just kept nagging at me. And so I don't know. I went back the last day, and I showed up, did the drumming audition, and you know they told me right then, based on that like a minor acting audition, they were gonna call me back. Long story short, you know, I go to the callback, goes great. I auditioned for them off and on for like maybe 3-6 months. I'm like so young at this point. I'm like 21 years old, or 20 even. And they started, you know, flying me to New York to audition like for a couple days at a time over like a 3 to 6 month period. And they finally gave me the gig. And then I went back to my college. I was like, hey, so I got this performance gig. Also has a lot to do with acting and clowning and movement and everything else. I'm gonna take a hike. They were really upset about me leaving my scholarship, but it just felt like the right thing to do. And I figured, you know, I can always go back to college if I need to. And then I did Blue Man Group off and on for about 18 years, with like an 8 to 10-year period in the middle where I went and did some acting in Los Angeles. Never had to get a job, you know, certainly didn't become a name or anything like that, but you know, whatever. But I had a really great time, and I learned a lot. And then I went back to Blue Man Group, and then somewhere along the way, I just realized I had other things I wanted to do, I wanted to accomplish, and I got into entrepreneurship. You know, and I realized, like, somewhere along the way that, like, oh man, like, it really fits me. Like, I really like it. It's really, really exciting. Like, it reminds me a lot of acting, actually, and it reminds me of writing a script or creating a piece of art out of nothing. Like, you just pull the idea out of thin air, and then you put it into creation and you make it happen. Which, you know, I've done a number of times with theater projects I've created, or films I've created, or whatever. Because they're just like, it turns out they're just little products. So I had a little bit of a skill set for it, and I really enjoy the ride of it. It's definitely scary, and it's definitely up and down, and yeah, and now I'm at where I'm at. Since I decided, you know, that entrepreneurship was the way I was going to go, and I started my first business. That business is still going, it's still successful, and I've got about 3 or 4 other, like, full-on businesses, and probably another 3 to 7 projects that I have very full on my plate. Some of the major setbacks that I've overcome. Oh man, you know, I would say the biggest thing is believing in yourself. 100% fully believing in yourself, your idea, whatever it is you want to accomplish, and like having faith when absolutely nobody else does, or it just feels to you like it's impossible. You know, coming from an acting background, I cannot tell you the amount of auditions you go to, and you feel like you've done an amazing job. You really feel like, oh man, I really created something really, you know, artistic and creative with that, and I didn't get a call back, or I did get a call back. It's almost worse sometimes when you get really close and then you don't get it. It's almost worse sometimes. But what you don't realize in those situations is you're a product stuck inside yourself, you know, and that you're trying to promote, and you don't know, if you're not privy to the conversation as to, like, why one person is getting it and one person isn't. And once you get to a realm or a situation where, like, you're the guy that's always getting called back, the conversation isn't like, oh, like, can these guys act? Can these guys do this job? It's like, what flavor do they want? Like, if you're getting called back, you know, on a regular basis, and you're meeting with producers, like, you're fine. It's that you weren't the right flavor they wanted that particular day. There's so many things out of your control. It's like, you know, just believe like you're there doing your process for you. What advice? Just general advice? Well, I mean, that's tough. I mean, I feel like a very, like, young entrepreneur, and it's almost an uncomfortable word to me. Like, oh, I'm an entrepreneur. Like, I'm, like, taking something on, you know? It feels more like I'm working my way to being an entrepreneur. You know, like Elon Musk. That guy's an entrepreneur. You know, it's Facebook, Google. Those guys that have turned these huge companies into even bigger companies. So that's a tough question for me. Like, you know, what advice I would be like, you know, I'd say the best advice is, like, if you have an idea, like, oh, I really want to be a baker, and I really want to, like, have my own bake shop. Go work for a baker. You don't have to go, like, invest all this time and money and energy. Like, you can just go work at a bake shop and find out real quick if you really love it or if you really hate it. Like, there's ways to beta test things that have nothing to do with money. It just has time and effort and like how much you care about it. You'll find out a lot really quickly. Have I ever had a situation where, as an entrepreneur, I dealt with something incorrectly and then learned a lesson, and now I deal with it differently? Yeah, for sure. I would say, don't take things personally. I've had situations where, like, maybe I took something personally, I didn't know all the facts. And always, no matter what, be a pleasure to work with. What characteristics really define what an entrepreneur is, at least to me? Someone that is not afraid of risk, someone who likes a challenge, someone who works well with others, because there's not a and to me, like business building, it's team building. There's very, very, very few singular solo entrepreneurs who don't have to interact with other people. Like, it's team building. You're building a team. I think knowing your place in, like, if you have a business, you have a team, like, not everyone can be the leader. You know, you've got to know what you do, know what your task is, and be okay with that. And if you're not, then you've got to have the characteristics to be like, you know what? I know that role isn't for me. And I think really having inspiration and creativity to problem solve is, and again, absolutely, hands down, the number one thing is you've got to have belief and faith in yourself and whatever it is you're doing. If you don't believe, nobody else is going to believe. So that's hands down first. And then I think, yeah, the second thing would be risk. Being willing to, like, bet the bank. Because if you're not going to bet the bank, I'm not betting the bank. Where do I see myself in the next 10 years? I see myself in a place where I have probably built a number of very, very successful businesses that are fun and exciting and probably make a difference for others. And 20 years, doing more of that. I plan on living for a very long time, and I don't feel like I work. I know that from the moment I wake up to the moment I go to bed, I'm hustling. But it doesn't really ever feel like work. Like, I get tired like everybody else, but, like, you know, you've got to really define, like, why you're doing something. And if that why is big enough, and you've had the ability, the self-awareness to be like, oh, I'm choosing the right things, and if you're uncomfortable, get out of it and and then go find the right things. Those two things really meet up. It shouldn't really feel like work. It's going to take effort, absolutely, but it doesn't feel like work. How I deal with rejection, I don't care. I literally just don't care. I mean, if it's a girl, you know, or a business you really love, and now that it's being ripped away from you, which I've had. You know, I've had you know, like, businesses be like, okay, you know, I've been in situations where we've been like, you know, this isn't what we thought it was, and it's turned out to be something different, and it's probably best if we don't have this business this way anymore. Whether I own a percentage of it still or I don't own a percentage of it, and it can hurt, you know. But to me, like, there's no difference. Like, you practice acceptance and awareness and belief in yourself again, and then if you've got motivation and drive, it shouldn't matter. If there is a formula to being a successful entrepreneur, there's some really key elements. You've got to be willing to think for yourself, whether you're playing on a team or not. Don't be afraid to shine your light as bright as need be, so that the full essence of your idea can be realized. Don't be afraid to push back. Like, don't be afraid to have an argument, like, if need be. Like, you don't ever want to do that. You always want to be a pleasure to work with, but invite the other person, the other side's point of view. You want them to push you back as well. It's going to help define your idea. It's going to help you define their idea. And hopefully the whole thing gets elevated. If everybody's playing nice and nobody wants to think for themselves and nobody wants to, like, nothing's going to happen. Like, you've got to be willing to be driven. You've got to be willing to believe in yourself. You've got to be willing to think for yourself and play nice with others. What is my greatest fear? That's a good question. If I was going to be really, really authentic about it, I think it would be that I would lose my ability to take risk, my ability to be fearless, and just jump. Because I've had a lot of success, just be like full on, just like seeing an idea, having a desire to do something, whether I had any know-how at all, and just jump in, like follow your instincts. And if I lost that ability, like because of fear, because I was afraid to, I don't know, start making risky choices, I wanted to be like conservative or something with my, because I wanted to save something. If I started operating from a context of fear, that would really scare the hell out of me. What's next for me is again, I don't really feel comfortable even calling myself an entrepreneur yet. Like, yeah, I make my living from some businesses that I started, but and not that small business owners aren't entrepreneurs, because they absolutely are. But are they the kind of entrepreneurs that I want to be? Not necessarily, not even close. So I would say what's next for me is taking some huge, big swings on really creating some amazing things. And I'm either going to get there or I won't, but I'm definitely going to try, because you miss 100% of the shots you don't take.
Look directly into this lens. If you could only use one word to characterize your life as an entrepreneur, what would that one word be?
Driven.